Hey,
Hello,
Denise
good
R.
afternoon.
How you doing, girl?
I'm doing well.
I hear you have some news to report.
Oh, yes, I was at a protest demonstration at the Craig Street Bridge here in Toledo, Ohio
Love it.
yesterday, and
Okay.
they're saying there were 4,000. The way it looked to me, more like 2,000, but whatever, somewhere between 2,000 and 4,000 people marching across the bridge, all kinds of signs, and I was It was my face that was started off the news report, holding my sign right here with a big smile, hands off,
What did your sign say, sweetie? Was it
hands off.
all right?
And I made six of them, so there were other signs similar around me. And yeah, I was on the
And
news.
hands off to you means what? Because you were right up front with the hands off for people. And by the way, welcome everybody. You are with trauma survivors walking each other home. And boy, have we been through a lot of changes since we've
Yeah,
been walking each other home. And Denise can explain what's going on. I just want to give an overall introduction and welcome you. If this is your first time with us, or your 30th time with us, or your 200th time with us, we are here to share with you everyday lives, what we can do as people who were traumatized as children and continued as adults in some cases. How do we live our lives so that we're not defined by the trauma, but we have acknowledged the trauma, we don't deny the trauma, and we find a way to have good lives. And the two of us are in the United States. Other people might be coming from other countries. Welcome. Glad you're here. Many countries, and particularly the United States right now, is highlighting what happens when there's, to state it neutrally, a change in government. And to state it from a trauma survivor's point of view, when the change of government means that the people in power remind us of the people that were in power when we were children and had no power. So, my father was a narcissist, he was an incester, he was a violent man, and he looked great to the community. I'll say that. Um, he was a responsible person, went to work every day. But so now, what do we have in charge of the United States government? And do we have what happened to our rights? Because people that are narcissistic and fascist do not respect individual rights. So that's the kind of situation we're in. And I just read yesterday, Robert Wright. Denise, I think I sent you what he writes about. This man writes every day. He worked in Bill Clinton's administration. He and Bill Clinton were Rhodes Scholars together in London. Robert Reich tells the truth in his first podcast. Once this new regime came in, was where's the outrage? And now he's writing his latest thing that he wrote is about this affects us all in a real guttural way. This affects our well-being. This anxiety that's behind everything affects our well-being and affects our mode and our mood. So, what we're going to talk about today, my friends, we're going to invite you to say, how are you doing with what's ever going on in your world? Now, that sounds huge and global. But if you're in the United States, you know what I'm talking about. And if you're in another country that's going through big changes, trauma survivors are at the crossroads here. So, Denise and I take two different approaches. Denise, who's going to remind us how to take care of ourselves in case something we say, I already used the word incest, in case something I say triggers us or Denise says triggers us, and then get right into how Denise did a very healthy thing to be right at the front of the line yesterday in her hometown. So, Denise, what can we do to take care of ourselves? If any of us, as we're talking about how to walk each other home as trauma survivors, if any of us mention something like I just mentioned incest, which was part of my abuse, how can we return to feeling safe? What do you think?
incest was also part of my childhood and other abuse as well. And so what I try to do is take action, be active, drink water when I'm triggered. I also have coffee because I'm kind of tired because It was a 1.5 mile walk over the bridge and a 1.5 mile walk back to our
Uh,
car.
Good for you. And
And
this
then
was 2 days ago too, right?
right,
Saturday.
right. So
Wow.
I'm
By
still
the way, can
recovering.
you, can you tell us about the website people can go to if they get triggered as you're talking and sharing what's
Yes,
going on?
we have the warm line on your phone. You can just touch your Google microphone and say warm line trauma survivor, and they will provide a bunch of phone numbers, and you can just select one that's appeals to you.
And then who's going to be waiting for you as you call?
A trauma survivor who has put effort into healing and is, willing to hear what you have to say, believe what you have to say, and support you in getting past difficult moments.
Thank you, Denise. And it's not a hotline. It's not if you need a hotline, call a crisis line where, people can help you deal with the crisis that you're in. But this is everything up going up to the crisis. This is like if you're really sad, if you're feeling really depressed, if you're really angry, if you just need someone to talk with about being a trauma survivor in the midst of traumatizing times. So now let's hear about Denise's choice to participate in what? Tell us about it in case people are
Uh,
not familiar.
yeah, the protest demonstration was called Hands Off. It was put on by our particular protest was put on by, is it Indivisible, I think, who organized these? Yeah, Indivisible.
Indivisible.
And then we
Hmm?
have Toledo Persists, and we have other people that collaborated to create this. So I've been a couple weeks excited about it. And because I want to stand with my sisters and brothers in the street and say, this is not right, Donald Trump. This is not right, Elon Musk. And
This is not right, Vladimir Putin.
right, I just wanted to stand with my sisters and brothers of Toledo. And so I made 6 signs, one for my housemate, one for me, and then 4 to give away, which I did. And I
How are
also
the
got a
signs?
cool,
Do you have any of the signs there?
they're out in my van still.
It's okay. What you
But
were just about to go get a quote or something?
yeah, I got this.
Resist, yeah.
There was a fellow there passing these out, and I think he said he passed out 2,500. So, and I'll
Cool.
be wearing that to my other protests now. So,
You got it, girl. Wow.
yeah,
So how did they, just to go back a little bit, how did they prepare you? Like, how did you know what you needed to do to prepare?
for 2 weeks now, they've been posting, how to be safe at a demonstration. This was a nonviolent demonstration, but you never know, in this state, particularly, there are supremacists that go around and disrupt things.
Denise is in,
Toledo, Ohio.
yep,
In
and there
Columbus,
are
Ohio, there were, got KKK guys marching down the street, in front in the predominantly gay area of downtown, where
the near north, the
yes,
short north, yeah.
yeah, one of those spots, and marching saying, we not my job, I don't know, some obnoxious stuff, but they're white supremacists. So they're in the state and they do organize. They have a march here sometimes, even.
Why do they choose gay neighborhoods?
Uh, to threaten people.
Gay people are part of life. Why would they choose to go
They
after
don't
them?
think they do not think gay people should be a part of life. They think, according to their beliefs, it's against God's will.
That chapter of Leviticus in the Bible, if you read it, it says everything. Everything's wrong. You can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do that, and you can't do this.
Right.
So maybe it says stuff about gay people, but it also says stuff about all kinds of other things. If we
Well,
followed all those.
actually, it also
Mhm.
says, and this is the translation of what it says.
Right.
So whoever translated it put their bias,
Hmm.
probably a patriarchal dude. And so what it says is a man should not lay with a man. They didn't say anything about the lesbians, so I'm okay.
You're a badass girl. I love it. I love that. I used to get away with that when the argument was for most of your life and my life that we use the masculine language and the masculine pronoun because that describes everybody. I'd say it doesn't describe me, honey.
It
Mm-mm,
doesn't
does not
describe me
describe
either.
me. In every one of the 6 books I've written, I do not allow the male pronoun to cover everybody. I always use she or sometimes she dash he. Now I know what people are using is using they.
Right,
And that's works for many people. For me, I'd like to, I still maintain the she, he, because I honor the people who have those identities and choose
right,
those identities.
right.
Um,
The
but anyway,
percentage of people,
yeah,
the percentage of people that go by they is very small.
is it?
I
I'm
think
kind of
so.
sorry to hear that, but I'm also glad it's available now.
Yeah, I mean, everybody as they wish.
Yeah, and I know a person who got divorced and said, first thing this person said to me was, I want you to call me they. I said, okay, I hear you. And I do, because that person's whole life was changing. But you know, the question I'm raising seemed kind of rudimentary, but it's not. Denise, I mean, I stay in that gay part of town when I go to Columbus. I love it.
Right,
It's where all the
right.
great, funky, it's got great restaurants, beautiful architecture. People take care of their houses. I mean,
Music, entertainment,
man,
uh, people walking around, but and that's where they chose to because they want to threaten people.
so they chose the liveliest part of town. Now, what does it say that this diversity, and the diversity is pretty dominant? We got so many lesbian, gay, LGBTQI people. And most people that are like I identify as she, but at the same time, I've got a lot of he in me.
Right,
And I bring that to the fore when I need to. And I was a Tom girl. And when I was a Tom girl, that meant my identity as a kid was no, I'm not identifying the way you're telling me I should be as a girl. I was not a girly girl. I
me
mean, I might
either.
wear lipstick now and I love me some earrings and color, but that's me. That's not necessarily me as a girly girl. I could be a guy and do the same thing.
Right.
Why the hell is it so threatening to fascist regimes to have people that might not be in the majority as they define the majority? Why is that so threatening? Why can't we just have, it seems simple, right? Why can't we just have lesbians at the table, Black people at the table, Koreans at the table,
Latinos,
neurodiverse?
Latinas.
Right.
I
Why
yeah,
can't we?
I don't know what the threat is that they're afraid they're going to lose their privilege.
They lose their power.
Yeah, and they never get to plenty with their grabs. They never feel like they have plenty, and that is the whole entire patriarchal capitalistic problem.
That's right. I mean, and that is the issue. How is that the issue for trauma survivors getting to plenty?
Um, well, we have to first figure out what we like because we were traumatized into not having wants and needs.
Right.
So when we get on that healing path, we the first thing that we have to do is discover what we want and what we need. And it's kind of hard because we've been socialized and we've become comfortable with being a people pleaser.
And it's hard because you're right. It's hard because we become people pleasers. Why become a people pleaser? Why not just go ahead and be yourself as a trauma survivor?
Well, it takes practice. That's why. For me, it took
It's,
a lot of practice to search for my authenticity, to, that was when I first got into astrology. The first thing I did with my chart was to figure out what things were not good, or, could be unpleasant or negative or whatever. And made affirmations to fix all those things about myself.
so what was one of you, I'm sure you recall, what was one of the things that you were working on?
Well, one of the things that I have in my chart is Sun square Saturn, which that's a father issue. And then it develops into an authority figure issue. So, and which, I attended to a lot because I am a people pleaser. And, once I found out that I could make my own money, which was at Ponderosa Steakhouse, my first good job, then I transferred the people pleasing from my home to my work. So I'm a
And you
fat.
became different. And you became different because you were very successful there. You
Yeah,
were
I
not,
loved it. Because I loved cleaning, and I challenged the typical there with, because they would only let guys cook, guys be the fry cook, but guys be the potato people. Even the dishwasher had to be guys. So I moved into every one of those jobs.
yeah, I've been a dishwasher too, and those machines are hot,
Hobart.
steamy, hot, woo, hot Hobarts. I agree. I agree. The question I'm asking here, you really appreciate your answering, is a very simple question. Why do we have to exclude other people to have our own lives? I don't think we have to, but I was raised that way, that there's only one person in power. I forget how you said it, Denise, but it's like, um, it was kind of the scarcity mentality that you're talking about is I'll never have enough. And I'll never have enough because somebody else will be taking it from me. And the other people that are taking it from me, I'll be lazy and say let's just say those are the easiest to identify. So they look different from me. They act different from me. And those are the guys that have got to go. And you know what that would look like if they prevailed? We'd have a white male authoritarian world, which would be really boring,
Which
but
that's
not
how
to
it kind of was. That was
right.
my worldview when I was a kid. The
Mhm.
men were out in the world working, and they had the power. When they came home, it was all about them. If you got a boy child, oh boy, you got the good one. And women were at home housewives.
Do you remember when you were growing up? Because images, like who we see in power, like right now, I watch the news once, I don't watch it all the time. But when I look at the news, I see some women. But
Yes.
back in the day, like you grew up kind of in the 60s, right? What
Right.
women in power did you see?
No, there were not women in power. I mean, we had a nun that was the principal at the school. So that was the top school power, what point, whatever.
And
And
those positions
but
are called sex coded. Those are permissible, acceptable positions that women could have. You could be a leader of a girls'
right,
school,
right,
right? You could be the head of a cleaning organization.
right,
You could be a nurse, and you could be a teacher unless you got pregnant and then
right,
you bye bye. And as long as you're willing to accept lower pay, you could be in sex coded positions. I know this from being an attorney. A position I was in the Maine Attorney General's office became a sex coded position. And why was that? It's because I began as the Assistant Attorney General in the criminal division, and I had two jobs, but one of the major jobs was to teach criminal law to all the state troopers and all the state municipal officers. And I got that job in part because I'd already been a teacher and I was really up on what it took to work with adults, because I had taught adults too. What happened with my position was, for years and years afterwards, they hired people who were women who had teaching experience. And I'm not saying they were intentionally sex coding the job, but it was an okay position for women
Right.
because it was in education. Women can be educators. And if we accept being educators, we take the vow of poverty. Because even though you worked for Head Start, God bless Head Start now, which was on the hit list, and it's been hit really
Yeah,
bad. Did they hit your state?
well, they stopped two food trucks from the food pantries, fully loaded, already paid for. We're not delivering them to the senior programs in Ohio. It's called Seagate. That's what they did here. But yes, I belong to a few of the Head Start sites, and they've closed regional offices,
They
which makes
closed
it
your
more
regional office?
right.
They did. They closed the one that applies to you. Region.
Um, I'm not
Which region
sure.
are
I
you?
saw like four different regional offices that were closed, and I never really paid attention to that. When I was in Head Start, I was really focused on classroom. So,
No, I hear you, girl. I just met with some Head Start people this morning. Their region is still open, but it sounded to me the way they were describing it was almost like every other region got closed down.
right.
Um,
Making it
anyway,
more difficult to get help in requesting a grant, in implementing a grant, in facilitating the grant requirements. It, they, it, it just makes it harder.
they cut down the regional office. They're cutting down all the core that makes sure people get paid, that makes sure kids get food, that makes sure this service is, all of that. It's just like going into USAID and firing everybody
Right.
under the sham allegation of, well, we're cutting junk. No, no, no. What gets cut if we go to a core office like USAID is women in Africa who are giving birth don't get food.
Right.
Babies in Africa don't get food. No one gets inoculated against malaria not because the medicine isn't there. The medicine's there, but they get rid of all the people, the designating people who are
Administer,
going to get
right.
those shots. I went yesterday to get, I have a fear, I'm going to say, I have a fear that we're not going to get our COVID shots or our flu shots done this year. Why do I fear that? Because of the person that's been appointed to be the head of health is, people will argue he's not anti-vaccine, but let's look at his history. Let's just look at the facts. And the meetings that were called every year to start the work on the new inoculation development, those have been, at least the last I heard, those were called off. There's and the people at the core, back to this, the people at the core who would be working on developing vaccination got fired, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not sure. Let's just play this out. I am not sure that any of us is going to have a vaccination against flu, against COVID. Now, that's going to hurt kids because kids go to school together. That's going to hurt elders, which you and I qualify as elders. It's going to hurt everybody. And, we are just a few years from the COVID shutdown, right? And you know what happened during the COVID shutdown? Did the government help you at all during COVID? So it was a different
Um,
administration.
they did send us money, I think. Didn't they send us a check?
Well, for example, I am self-employed now. As a self-employed person, the government, for the first time I recall, took into account that we were losing our income. So we could sign up for something, I forget what it was called. So I had a steady income which paid for food and a few other essentials. I mean, I didn't do anything during that time. I just kept everything really tampered down. But yeah, they had a way of compensating people. So people got checks. Now that's not going to
Right.
happen. That the current administration would just not do that.
No.
So this whole conversation came out of my question of a very simple question, which is why must we exclude people to feel we have to be okay? And clearly, Denise, you and I don't feel we have to exclude people. We feel we can
We don't.
include. It's about
Right.
inclusion.
I am all about inclusion. My bachelor's degree is in special education, which, the buzzwords during my years of school were inclusion. And, I took that to heart, and I love diversity. That's that was the first thing Donald Trump attacked was DEI.
Isn't that amazing? So that the word Enola Gay got taken out of
Right,
federal government publications because the word gay was there.
right,
Yeah. The Tuskegee Airmen, those guys are like heroes to all of us. And particularly young Black children need to see that these men, they were not women at the time, but that these people did a very brave thing. And still, so the photographs of Tuskegee Airmen, DEI, got to get rid of those. DEI has a peculiar way of sounding like DIE. And it's remarkable to me that all of those efforts and all the language was removed. And have you watched what's going on, Denise, with some corporations are fully supporting this and they're stopping their DEI
right.
commitments?
If companies do that, the indivisible people are making us aware of what companies uh, continue with DEI and which companies do not. And
Has that affected? Yeah.
Walmart first tried to act like they were going to follow that too, but there was such a huge backlash because we boycotted Walmart and Target, and it had an effect. Walmart has changed their mind. They're not going to go anti DEI. And Target, who recently I saw an advertisement that we will be turning half our lights off and have fewer cashiers, and because they're losing money now because nobody's shopping there.
Mhm.
Well, some people are, but those that are trying to have an economic effect on this administration, because that's all he really understands, and he doesn't really understand that well, obviously.
Yeah.
But that's what everybody thinks. He's a good businessman. So that's the angle. That's one of the angles that is part of the resistance.
And there's something to do with trauma survivors right there. I mean, anything we're talking about has to do with being a trauma survivor. Part of the trauma I had as a child was the truth was not told. Lies were told. Lies were cover-up lies. Lies were, you didn't see that, daughter, or when something happened that was a horrible truth, or just something people didn't want me to know. or we never could talk outside the family about what was going on outside the family, so we could never ask for help. Now, what you just said, that a lot of people believe that the current president we have is a good business person. I'm going to say two things about that. Number one, 6 bankruptcies and being fully funded by your patriarchal father does not add up to being, go
He
ahead.
bankrupt a casino. I mean,
I've never run a casino, honey, but those are money makers, right?
right. I mean, the whole business plan, which is already well defined and, is a profit. I don't know. He's not that capable business wise.
Well, I remember when I was speaking, I don't know if it was the Trump, whatever it was in Atlantic City, because a lot of times state associations would hold their meetings in Atlantic City. And I was speaking there. And the word was so many of the employees were not paid. So many of the people that built the casino were not paid. People were so,
Contractor,
right. The contractors were not.
independent contractors, right? Not huge companies, but small businesses that, have 10, 20 employees, and then they stiffed them.
Mhm. The vulnerable guys. So back to this being a great businessman. Number one, 6 bankruptcies. Number two, being funded by daddy, who was a racist, all sexist, all of that stuff. That does not make a good businessman. Number two, I haven't said this before, but when I had my radio program, Heart to Heart Conversations, on leadership, your guide to making a difference, I interviewed a lot of people that were in the New York Times, because that was one of my sources. And so I interviewed this guy who was the author, essentially, of The Art of the Deal. Because a lot of times, the people who are in power just hire somebody to write the book,
Right.
and then they say co-authored by or whatever, but it's really ghosted. And I remember having this guy on, and just there was nothing I could say to him that would get him off his high. I mean, by high, I mean, he had all of his points, talking points ready. And no matter what question I asked, he was going to plow through to that talking point. It was not a very good interview. Good interviews to me were when I would ask somebody a question. And I was coached by a guy who was a Grammy Award winner. He said, what you need to do is ask somebody a question where they say, they have to stop and think. They have to say, well, that's a really good question, because their brain is trying to figure out what to say. Couldn't get through to this guy. And later on, he essentially said, yeah, Donald Trump is not a good businessman. This is baloney. But because of television, and I never watched that program. Did you watch, what was it called? The
I
Apprentice or
don't know,
something?
but he would always say, "You're fired."
Right. And what is the message of that? God, you're excluded. I
Right.
have the power to exclude you. It's the patriarchy, it's the white male patriarchy again. And that must have had resonance with people. So here we are, April 7th, 2025. We're trauma survivors, and we've got all this trauma going on, and it's a repeat. It is a repeat of what we went through. And so what you did was just the right thing. You got out there and it's like, I'm 79 now. So when Nixon was doing his stuff, I would go to Washington and I would march on Washington, and I occupied the chancellor's office at the university where I was a graduate student. I did all that stuff. And today it's not quite as comfortable for me to get involved with these huge groups and have huge transport in and out. And, it's not quite so safe or comfortable. But tell me this, you were saying to prepare for this march on Saturday, Indivisible prepared you about how to be safe. I'm just interested, because trauma survivors, safety is an issue for us. What did they
Right.
tell you that was helpful?
Helpful. It was to, not really have any personal items on yourself. Lock it up at home or lock it up in your car. and, stay nearby others. Do not engage with those that are counter protesting.
Did you
And
run
I've
into any of
also had
those?
peacekeeper training before, which is the same type of deal, same type of thing. Just,
And what did you learn from that? That's helpful too.
from that, we would actually, if there was somebody that was being aggressive, we would just circle them with peacekeepers and talk to them like you're safe. Nobody's going to hurt you. You're going to, try to talk them down
Did
and
you ever
move
have
them
to do?
away from the group,
Oh,
that
that's good. Did you ever have to do that?
we didn't. I only really organized one take back the night mess, take back the night protest in Glendale, Arizona.
Uh-huh.
And so I was in charge of training peacekeepers. Not the training, I only signed people up with trainers. Like I organized that.
Okay.
That was
That's
my
important.
contribution. Yeah, it was a good part. And so, it's make sure your eyes are open and you're watching and you're aware of your environment. Be present, you know.
And that doesn't translate to the trauma survivor trait of being hypervigilant.
Right. We're already hyper vigilant. We
And
are.
and and I'm trying to well, what am I doing? I'm trying, I'm choosing to feel safe, to allow the possibility that I'm safe. While at the same time, being aware that if something unsafe comes up because of my being traumatized in a heartbeat, I
Yes,
can
we
step
are
into
good in an emergency.
crisis.
We are really good in emergency crisis. At least I know I am. And I think that it's part of the hypervigilance.
Girl, that's what the research says, that trauma survivors are often selected for positions of responsibility because we are calm in a crisis. We might fall apart afterwards, but we would do
Right.
that personally, not with other people watching, right?
Right.
We're calm in a crisis. We are, and the magic two words, take charge.
Right.
We take charge. And did you have to do that as a child?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we were pretty much unsupervised a lot of the time. So
Right.
safety was an issue.
Safety was always an issue when I was inside the house with people in the
Right.
family. And so I was always watching out for safety. There could be a red alert, but it would never be announced. My father's violence could be triggered. And all of a sudden there would be violence in the house. And it was every person, every woman, every girl for herself. And so as the youngest, my response was, especially in the wintertime when I couldn't get outside, go hide. I knew every hiding place in that house, and it wasn't that big a house. So yeah, I'm asking all these questions because since we focus on how to be trauma survivors, living each day, not just surviving each day, um, what are you learning, or how do you see the experience you had on Saturday, taking a stand, marching? How does that help you as a trauma survivor, and how does that translate into your everyday days for things that you would do every day?
I feel that with my healing path, I was able to find myself safe right here. I am safe. This is my safety. I can depend on myself and I will take charge to be safe. And so that took time to develop that because, as a manipulated child, you you look back and like, whoa, that was dumb. But it wasn't dumb, it was planned. So on the healing path, I had to learn to become safe right here. I'm safe.
I just want to
As
ask you, because I'm not sure, I want to be sure that I understand what you're saying. You were saying something wasn't dumb, it was planned. Can you give me an example?
right, I wasn't dumb for laying down on the couch. Somebody had a plan of what was going to go there, what was going to happen there. My abuser planned that, that he would attack when I was laying on the couch.
So to keep yourself safe, you would not lie on the couch. Is that right?
Uh, One would think, but I was, I was
Kid,
a kid, right? And I didn't know. I wasn't that smart. Well, it
well, you were
wasn't that I
just,
wasn't smart. I was being tricked, you know?
I hear you. I mean, you were
Yeah,
just being a kid.
right,
Kids get tired. They need to take a rest. They need to lie down. And you needed that. And that was a signal for abuse.
right,
So it wasn't dumb. It was, but the other person, it was a chance to take over.
right. Manipulate. Yep.
Right. And so now I'm interested in knowing how being part of this group of people, whether it was 2,500 or 4,000, whatever it was a significant group of people with the same purpose, taking the same action. Now that's something that helps me as a trauma survivor. It's like singing in unison.
Right. It was like all together now. And, we're safe. There's safety in numbers, and there is safety in numbers. And we've learned that since we were in high school and, stick close to your girlfriends or whatever. So it felt like, it's built-in safety. Plus, the Toledo police were amazing. I'm pretty sure they supported the premise of they were just so good. Like on the way
Mm.
over, they kept us more into a small, just a line, which the line went over the entire bridge.
Oh, wow.
And then on the way back, they closed the bridge completely to traffic, and we could walk all in a much larger chunk. It was really cool.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, and I
What would,
always like to say thank you to them for keeping
oh,
us
yeah.
safe.
What did it feel like to be in the midst of people that you knew are dedicated and care about the same things you care about?
Really, it was a very diverse group.
Mhm.
Actually, it wasn't diverse, as it was mostly white people. But there was another demonstration in the other part of town. This teenage girl was murdered by her estranged father in a house, and it was a horrible thing for our community, the Black community in this town. And so they had their own, they were having a ritual prayer for her at the place where she was found. So that could have been part of the reason why there weren't a lot of Black folks there.
Mhm.
But that was something one of my friends noticed. I didn't notice it. I just noticed that I'm there with the people and the people are all here. But she pointed out that there weren't very many African American people. And then when I looked at all the photos and everything, I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. There weren't. But then when I got home, I saw a post that they had a huge demonstration for that young girl.
So what I'm hearing is the world you live in, the world I live in is really diverse. And it's diverse by choice because there was a Supreme Court case about this like decades ago, and it said, we white people, because this is the only way to prevail, we white people are harmed if we don't have diversity in our lives. We're missing out on. And I said, yeah, that's right. But it's not about me and what I'm missing out on. That's the side effect. It's about the rights of the people that have a right to. their voices and to be just as heard as anybody else. But so what you're usually saying is you're surrounded by people of differences. And that's where
Right,
you feel at home. That's where I
right,
feel safe.
right. There were old people, young people, goth people, hippie people. It was mostly older. I noticed older women, but my friend said no, it was gender neutral, it was general equal.
Okay.
But I said, okay, I just noticed all the women. But one thing that I noticed when we were standing there listening to the presentations, this woman she turned to me and say, "Isn't this wonderful? Isn't this wonderful? Isn't this wonderful?" And I said, "Is this your first protest?" And she said, "Yes."
Uh,
So I invited her to come to the Black Lives Matter
the
protest too, so
weekly.
she can have more wonderful. I said, if you find this wonderful, you should come and do a Black Lives Matter demonstration. And she goes, I live over there. I probably will.
But I bet she will.
Yeah, she probably will.
Oh, I love that. I
But
love
yeah,
that.
it was a lot of first time demonstrators, I think,
Oh, that's beautiful to hear.
Yeah, I felt like it was a lot, but I do have wishful eyes, wishful thinking or whatever. But
There's another trauma survivor trait. We are always, as often as we can be, we are optimistic because we need that energy, need to keep our eyes on the prize. I need
right,
to have the hope that things will get better. And if I don't have that hope, it's pretty depressing in the moment, you know?
right, right,
Like I have hope that the democracy in America will survive. I have hope of
right,
that. And yet I believe people, um, white men, essentially, who are saying to me, it's going to get better, it's going to get worse before it gets better. And it
right,
is. They're right about that. I mean, I listen to them about what they know from the inside
right,
about hierarchy. And one of the things they know is that it's going to get really bad. Well, it's already bad. I want to say this. Um, I mean, people that I know have been affected, getting fired, getting,
yeah,
all of that awful stuff. Yeah, like my friend that I mentioned that got promoted as a Head Start person. She'd moved up, 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 up in Head Start, and she was really doing a great thing in her state. And then she got promoted to go to Washington, D.C. So she was a new hire, and she got one of those nasty letters that said you didn't do your job, you're not qualified, blah blah blah.
right,
She, I hated those letters, and they went to everybody. A woman in the Forest Service got the same letter. A man in the Forest Service would get the same letter. But so I know people like that. But I want to say, I've been self-supporting my entire life, basically, once I finished college because my parents paid for some of that. Um, but my income from my savings gone. Last year with Biden, I was able to buy me a used car, and used cars cost a lot when you get it. This was $34,000 car. I was able to take that out of my savings and pay it in full not because I'm rich, but because I know the older I can't afford any more monthly payments.
payments, right,
So I had to pay for the whole thing. It's just like before I bought my condominium, I just had this instinct to just take everything I had and pay for it outright. I do have a $500 a month condo fee. That's significant and not going away, but I don't have the mortgage. So I know as an elder that I can't be taking on more every month payments. And I celebrate
right,
when I celebrated when my student loans when I paid them off.
right. That's what they were saying on NPR today on a program about, you know, what's happening with this cut and the losses to our 401k
Yep.
uh, is that so they've been, figuring things out. And the way that we've held on to prosperity in this country is senior citizens don't have debt. But right now, a lot more senior citizens are in debt. It used to be that they would get their debt gone by the time they were senior. And that was, like the goal, even though I didn't pay attention to that, but the goal was to not have debt as you age. And, but they're observing right now that there's a lot of senior citizens that have more debt than their predecessors.
And now here comes,
The
here comes
crunch.
the crunch and the trauma because, as Bessel van der Kolk, the author of The Body Keeps the Score on trauma, he said orally, I heard him say, 80% of trauma survivors go to our graves never owning that we were traumatized. So there are a lot of elders who are not accepting that are trauma survivors. And that's a choice. Well, that's sort of a choice. But what that means is without acknowledging that I'm a trauma survivor, it's hard for me to get help.
Right.
It's hard for me to do what you did. I mean, for me, what you did on Saturday was to be part of a group of people that are committed to making things better. And they're not alike. They're different. They
No.
all have different voices.
Right.
And
And
they're
they all have different things that they want the hands off. Hands off
right.
Social Security, hands off Medicaid, hands off Medicare, hands off immigration, immigrants in our community. We have a lot of immigrants in this community. There was a Latino presence at the demonstration, and they're
Good,
having protect immigrants march in a month from now. So, which I'll participate in that as well.
good,
But
good, good, good.
everybody has a different thing that they're mad about. That's what I noticed about this group. We
But
don't
if you
have
were to say it's not just a monolithic, like they all look like white folk, because there's a lot of stuff going on beneath the surface, right? But what would you say, Denise, is the one uniting desire, heart's
anti-Trump,
desire,
anti-Elon Musk was the unifying thing. No
right? And to
king,
be,
no,
mhm.
some people hands off democracy. There were millions of different, as many people as there were, that's how many different ideas of what they're mad about.
And that's great because trauma comes
Yes,
in all kinds of shapes and forms. And some people can be traumatized that never had a hand laid on them, that they
right.
were so shamed and so taught that they are worthless,
Or
that their
neglected,
whole life
right.
has been affected by that. Yeah. So we only have maybe 5 minutes left. I just want to hear because it's so fresh in your mind and your heart. What else? Tell me what else really you carry with you, or do you remember? Are there moments that you remember from that march of things that touched your heart?
I really, yeah, all the diversity of signs. I really loved that the organizers are young people, and I love that. And like I have a habit that I try to develop in myself because I worked with a lot of student teachers
Mhm.
in my classroom, and so I would always think of them as my mentors. They would
Nice.
think they were coming for me to be their mentor, but I love young mentors. And so that was a really happy thing that I felt that, these young people are stepping up.
That's beautiful. So you had a whole bunch of mentors responsible for this, making sure
Right.
it happened. I love that. That's a
Yeah.
great thing. Did anything surprise you in a really healing way or good way?
The surprising thing was how friendly the police were and how supportive the police were. I mean, normally they're more neutral, like at
Hmm.
Gay Pride or at the Old West End Festival. They're not really that enthusiastic. I don't know. Maybe instead of paying the protesters, they paid the police. You know, that fake thing that he says, oh, all paid protesters, all paid. Someone posted on one of our posts for the demonstration, oh yeah, all 10 of you, like there would only be 10 people there. Some people had
I,
signs, unpaid protester.
I watched the images of people marching through New York City. That was, you could not have paid all those people. There's no
Right,
way, be
right.
bankrupt. Although Putin maybe he's pumping money in, but no, no.
No, there were no paid protesters. I mean, we're not greedy. We want enough for everybody. We already got to plenty. You know, somebody said, this should have been planned to be in a better place, like Franklin Park Mall or whatever, where more people would see us. And I wrote, plan one there. And she
Right,
goes,
great, but
yeah, go ahead. You plan one for there. And she wrote to me, that comes from a privileged point of view. Can't even fill up my gas tank. How can I plan blah, blah, blah? And I just said, well, whatever.
also the fact that you guys marched over a bridge. The first thing that came to my heart when you said that was the Edmund Pettus Bridge,
Right,
Selma, Alabama. Who
right,
could forget our man, Lewis, saying, John Lewis saying, be about making trouble, good trouble. A
right.
lot of good trouble was made. And since we focus here on how trauma survivors can have good lives, how did that participating in that help you have a good life as a survivor? Because you could be scared to death. I mean, I think if they were to take a pulse of the country right now, like take everybody's bodily response, there'd be a hell of a lot of trauma response, tension,
Right.
anxiety.
Yeah.
Um, that's what I was talking about last week when I had depression. It was, the trauma counselor I talked to said, Holly, just remember, sweetie, oppression leads to depression. And
And
there it is.
depression is saying focus in. Then
Yep.
you
It's
can
the
go.
anger that I have. It's the anger that I learned I could not express toward the power because the power would annihilate me, hit me, incest me. So, and potentially kill me. So if I couldn't protest them, what could I do? I could like make it about myself and say, well, if I could only change this or that about myself, then I wouldn't be hurt so much. And then my older sister said to me, kid, I'm 3 years old. She says, kid, if you don't cry, they won't hit you as much. And I thought it through in my 3-year-old brain. I noticed that she was right. So what you're doing as a protester, and what all of us who have been protesters over the years, whether or not we make it there physically or
Or you're
not,
posting pictures or of yourself, sharing photos of other protests. You'll have to go to my
exactly.
page and see the Toledo one.
Oh, I will. And you know what? All the time people are asking for money, and I could be saying, what? Or what I do, I give $3 at a time.
Right.
And that $3, if there are 100 of us giving $3, that's money. And
Yeah.
also there are people doing like, we'll match this 6 times over. So I just, and plus the people who are making the difference or the people that are running for office can say, well, I had so many thousand people contribute and some people contributed, everybody contributed what they could. That meant $1 from somebody, but I appreciate that
Right.
dollar, that $3 from Holly Elissa Bruto off of Pittsburgh, Mass.
Right.
I mean, it's just feeling connected. And that I think, Denise, and I want to ask you about this before we end, because we need to end. What is it about being a trauma survivor that when we connect with others, it gives us power in a healing way? And I want to say for me, safety is so huge to me because I never felt safe. How do I feel safe now? I collect myself, I get together with other people that are trauma survivors that have been through similar stuff and that agree to certain ground rules. Number one, we don't judge each other. We're not here to be critical of each other. We're here to listen to each other. But number two, I'm going to open my heart to what you're saying. And I can learn. It's not only not judging you, I'm opening my heart to learning from you. And I know that you're not going to hurt me. That's not your goal. So when I'm with people like you were at that march, you had all those factors going. I think what I'll say for me, what I recreate is the family that I didn't have. I co-create a chosen family, and that means the world. What about for you? What is it? What do you think it means to you as a trauma survivor to do these kinds of collective protests?
What it means is that I am a part of a community. And that's what I really like. And, the whole reason I moved back to Toledo from California or Arizona, well, both,
Both.
was, was, to be back in my family. And not only am I back with my family, even though one's south, one north, a couple hours that way, a couple hours that way, but I'm in the community that I grew up in. So I saw people that I knew from elementary school at the protest. I saw people that I've met in my group that I belong to. So when I lived in Arizona, I never had that bumping into somebody that I knew. And it's a
Right.
beautiful thing. So that was part of the beautiful thing of being a part of this demonstration here in Toledo, is that this is my community. I'm here for my people. These are my people.
These are my people. This is a community of protest, and we're protesting for giving everybody a chance. I tell you, when I saw pictures of Corning, New York, people crowding the main street, there's one main street of Corning, New York, where I'm from, I thought it was beautiful. And the person that posted it, he's like a religious guy. He said when he posted the information about people coming to the protest, he got some really slamming responses. And honestly, I would expect that from a very conservative community. He showed up anyway.
Yep.
You showed up anyway. When we show up for each other as trauma survivors, boy,
And we
you
say,
can't.
I see you, you see me. We see each other, you know?
It's
It's a beautiful
and we
thing.
feel each other. Okay,
Right.
sweetie, thank you for being here this week. I'll see you
Thank
next
you.
week,
Yep.
and we'll see where we are next week as trauma survivors walking each other home.
Right.
Okay, girl, love you. Thanks everybody who's
Thank
watching
you.
later, and we'll hope to see you next week.
Yep.
Fairly well.